I remember a long time ago, when I was in grade 4, my sister was telling me about a Halloween costume her friend had made. You see, he was dressed up as a ninja, and because it was Halloween, he was doing backflips down the street while trick-or-treating. I thought to myself, wow, how cool is that? If only I had started karate a couple years ago, I could be doing the same thing. But no, you know what, I can't start now. It's too late, I'm getting too old, and I don't have time for it. Fast forward to grade 7, and I started thinking about karate again. But the only thing that was on my mind was, oh man, if only I had started karate back in grade 4, I would have been really good at karate right now. So you know what? I missed my chance. I can't start now, it's too late, and I don't have the time for it. Again, pushing forward, 2001, I'm in grade 12, and I actually convinced myself and a friend to go to a local dojo and start practicing karate. But you know what was on my mind when I was learning those uppercuts and roundhouse kicks? Why didn't I start in grade 7? Because if I did it then, I could be really good at karate right now. You know what? I only continued with karate for another year before I gave it up when other priorities came up. It would seem the cycle would continue for years to come, just one excuse after another. I'm sure for many of you, it's often the same story, but for you, replace karate with something like going to the gym and getting into great shape, learning how to cook, or learning how to play the guitar. We've all said it, we've all done it, we've all been through this. But now the year is 2013, and a lot has changed. I'm a first aid instructor, a survival instructor, a scuba instructor, a skydiver, a long-distance runner, a high-altitude mountaineer, and a student here at UBC. It turns out I learned a couple lessons along the way, from dropout karate kid to TEDx speaker. Become an expert at making time. If it's been done before, we can do it too. And finally, never give up. Before my life as a student here at UBC, I was, and I currently still am, an officer in the Canadian Forces. Over the years, the military has taught me a great deal of things, including the limits of what your body can do and what your mind can endure. Here's a picture of me and my friend Mike on military exercises. You see, we were awake for nearly 3 weeks straight. We're not happy campers. Chronically tired, soaking wet and exhausted, we were planning and executing missions all night long. There was no time to spare, and definitely no time for rest. Even with all of this, we had to proceed. I was exhausted. At one point, I even fell asleep while walking next to a ditch and didn't wake up until it hit the bottom of it. It was crazy. Here's a student, I still feel the same time limitations. For me, it's easy to say, well, I wake up, I go to school until well into the afternoon. I come home, I make dinner, I study for a couple hours, check Facebook, and then go to bed. For the working man or woman, it's the same thing. Work, eat, chores, TV, and sleep. Sound familiar? We all wish we could find the time to do things we really want to do. But you know what? The excuse just immediately comes out, I don't have the time for it. I wanted to find the time for karate. Since then, my philosophy has changed. I don't give up before I've even started. I don't use that same excuse, I don't have the time for it. Now it's, I'll make time. The key is, we have to take the activities that we really want to do and just put it into our schedule and get it done no matter what is going on around us. Whether that be adding time at the end of your day or putting it straight in the middle of a whole bunch of different activities. We can all find the time for things that are important to us. Between November 2009 and September 2010, I was deployed to Afghanistan. For a while, I was stationed in the beating heart of Kandahar in a place called Camp Nathan Smith. We were in charge of creating a new headquarters that was to protect and develop the city itself, a city of 1 million people. All eyes were on us as President Obama had just sent a huge wave of American soldiers that were to come and help us and the world was expecting results. I was working like crazy, doing everything and anything to make things work. Between visiting with the Afghan National Police, to training with the workers at Saraposa prison, to serving for huge Hindenburg-sized surveillance blimps, all the while being yelled at by my superiors, my old Army colonels yelling at me, why the communications were down? Why were the radios down? It was crazy. It was nonstop from 7 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week, every day. It would have been easy for me to just turn around at the end of a long day and give up on myself, forget about anything I wanted to do. But, you know what? I needed to stay in shape. How else was I supposed to carry the 50 pounds in body armor, weapons, ammunition, or grenades that was to protect me and keep me safe in the hot, dusty desert? So you know what I did? I worked out from midnight to 1 in the morning to make things work. But there was more. I wanted to become a dentist. Totally unrelated. And I needed to make myself eligible for dentistry for when I returned back to Canada. As you can imagine, it was an idea that generated skepticism from my family and friends. But really, it was a promise I made to myself as a way to solve my ailing mother's failing dentition in the face of rising dental costs and treatment we could not afford. So I pushed forward. The problem was, I had a degree in computer engineering with no background in biology, biochemistry, physiology, or organic chemistry. How was I going to make this work? So you know what I did? After a 17-hour day, I'd hit the books from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. I made the time to make it work. We can all find the time to make it work as well. In this instance, I even had my books spread across the floor, and very often, I'd have to collect them back up again as rockets would rain down on our position from insurgents. When I was on the road, I'd take my biochemistry textbook with me so I could study in those 5 minutes I had in between orders. Secretly, I was hoping that the 500 pages of science would stop a bullet. It just goes to show that we can all find that time to make things work and find the time for the things that are important to us. We can do it. Ever think about going to the gym that day, but deemed it was just too late in the evening? It's not too late. It's never too late. We can all become experts in making time. In Afghanistan, I've also seen great progress and great loss. Little girls were going to school. We just had a successful election without bloodshed. And farmers were getting the tools they needed to bring water onto their lands. However, the Taliban were still sending threatening night letters, beating local elders in town squares, and setting up deadly improvised explosive devices against us. I remember speaking to a young medic in Camp Nathan Smith. A week later, she was in a coffin, a flag-draped coffin, being sent back home to Canada. Even with her successes, it was a sad and dark place. This is a room in the Dan District Center. The District Center was a place where the local people could come to sort out issues and experience what good government could do for them. It was also the site of a deadly improvised suicide bomber attack. As you can see, the blast was strong enough to take the paint off the ceiling and walls. Afghanistan had a way of humbling all those who served there. As part of my deployment, I was eligible for 2 blocks of 2 weeks off. During these blocks of time, most people would go home back to Canada to see their family and friends. I decided to go to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Standing at 5,895 meters above sea level, it is the highest mountain on the continent. As you can imagine, I had an amazing time climbing at high altitude with my best friend. But as soon as it started, it was over, and I was back in the hot, dusty desert, sitting on my cot. It was at the epicenter of all this loss and tragedy that I wanted to give up. I had enough of that crazy place, and I just wanted to go home back to Canada. I still had 6 months left in my tour at this point. So I needed something to keep myself occupied. Something big, something meaningful, something that would prove that we as people can accomplish amazing things and not just amazing harm. Something that would truly test the limits of what I thought I could and could not do. It was at that moment that Dare 7 Summits was born. It would be my attempt to climb the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents. It was the day I sought out to prove that anything is possible when you never give up. Much like my dental dream, my 7 Summits pursuit was met with skepticism and uncertainty. You see, I'm not a professional mountaineer, and summit attempts on each, if not all of these mountains have led to deaths every single year. But I look towards those who have been successful. Over the years, 230 people have accomplished the 7 summits. 230 people from all different backgrounds, all different ages. Men and women all had the same dream. All of them likely faced challenges, setbacks, and defeats. But you know what? They all succeeded. I thought to myself, if they could do it, why can't any of us? We're all human and we're all capable of amazing things. The same applies to really anything in life. Ever want to run a marathon? How about starting an MBA after being well out of school for over 10 years? Other people have done it and they've succeeded. Why can't any of us? If they can do it, we can do it too. And finally, never give up. It's one of those things that gets thrown around very often, but it's extremely difficult to do. For those who grasp this concept, they're able to excel. It's not only the ability to endure physical hardship, but also mental toughness. When your body and mind tell you it's time to give up, it's really not over until you give your last breath. High altitude mountaineering is an extremely difficult activity. Not only are you at the mercy of the mountain, but the higher you go, the less oxygen you have. This in the corner is a pulse oximeter. We use it to effectively measure how much oxygen is in our blood at any given moment. Here at sea level, a healthy person like you or I would have an oxygen saturation of 99 to 100%. Anything in even the low 90s would warrant a visit to the doctor or even an emergency. A low oxygen saturation means you get things like headaches, vomiting, fatigue, all the way to things that are really bad, like high altitude pulmonary edema, which is your lungs filling with fluid, or high altitude cerebral edema, which is your brain filling with fluid, both of which could be fatal. This is a pulse oximetry reading I took at over 6,000 meters at the highest camp on Aconcagua. As you can imagine, I was not feeling very good at this point. For days, I had been battling mind-numbing headaches at base camp. I had never acclimatized so poorly to a mountain before. My fellow climbers were starting to fall back and turn back home due to exhaustion and illness. One of my fellow climbers actually had to be helicoptered out to the hospital because he got pulmonary edema. I was starting to doubt myself, my abilities, and my body's physical condition. Right then and there, I wanted to turn around and go back home. But I thought about it, and nobody would have ever doubted my decision to turn around. The reasons were sound. The mountain would always be there. I could always come back. It just wasn't my time. However, in my heart, I still wanted to back that summit. We had been on the mountain for over 10 days already, battling high winds, snow, you name it. And the winds had died down just enough to allow for a summit attempt. I thought back to Afghanistan, and I told myself that I had proved that anything is possible when you never give up. So I decided to push ahead. On summit day, more of my fellow climbers were turning around. They were exhausted. our guides had deemed them too slow. One of my fellow climbers actually started vomiting straight in front of me. But I pushed forward. My body was aching. I was counting my steps, counting my breaths, thinking about that summit. At one point, my vision started to fail me. Everything that was dark suddenly got really dark. Everything that was bright suddenly got really bright. It was really, really concerning. But I pushed towards that summit, one step at a time. After 9 hours of excruciating effort, I made it to that summit. The view was worth it. The accomplishment was worth it. Every step for that one moment. So it turns out, well, the same can be said about anything. If we put the hard work in and never give up, we can accomplish amazing things. So it turns out, all those years ago, maybe I probably should have started karate. It only took me 24 years, a hot desert, and a couple of mountains for me to figure that out. It turns out that hard work really does pay off. I got into UBC dentistry on my first attempt. And as for mountaineering, I've climbed 5 of the 7 summits, with plans to travel to Antarctica next year and Everest shortly after graduation. It turns out it's never too late to start something that we really want to do. No matter what we may think, what our constraints are, how old we are, or how busy our life is. I didn't grow up to become the karate master I wanted to be all those years ago. But that hadn't stopped me from following my dreams today. If you hold these close to your heart, you'll be able to achieve more than you ever thought possible. No excuses, no regrets. Thank you very much for your time.